Right now, Aaron Rodgers is 7th all-time in passing yards. Phillip Rivers is 6th. Aaron Rodgers has 63,399 yards. All he needs is 42 yards in this game to pass Phillip Rivers for 6th. Welcome to this episode of Just the Stats NFL, the show that covers the NFL statistical leaders from the all-time greats to the current players leading the NFL. And along the way, we also cover the games every week. Give pregame, postgame, and we give the stats. Every Wednesday, I'll give the standings and the stats for every team in the NFL. So now we begin pregame. All these will be 1 o'clock games, except for the Thursday night game tonight. I'll also include that. That'll be the first game I talk about. I'm still getting the hang of, since this is my first endeavor into podcasting, I'm still getting a hang of the time it requires to study these teams or adding information and what information to add to my pregame or postgame and so forth, because as you well know, there's a myriad of information out there, but you can't do it all. I don't have unlimited time, and no one wants to listen to a podcast that lasts hours on end. So, still figuring it out, but hopefully I'm getting it each week, little by little, better and better. All right. So with all that, let's get started with the Thursday night game tonight, 8:15. The Bills, Miami Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills. Bills favored by 11.5. Huge. I'll tell you after we talk about the game who I think will win this game. All right, so what I do in my things is just look at the numbers, any players that we're looking at for each team in this game, and are they in the top 10 or getting close to making a position like in the top 10 of some sort. I will mention that the Miami Dolphins actually lead this series 62-60 with one tie. Now, for the Buffalo Bills playing at home, right now the only player is Ed Oliver, who has 52 tackles for loss. He's 8th all-time for the Buffalo Bills in that category. Pat Williams and Marlo Williams both have 53, so he needs one tackle for loss to pass him. There's no injuries, at least no major injuries for the Buffalo Bills. There are some on defense. Now, when I say key injuries, which is what I'm talking about, I'm really actually talking about the players that are in fantasy in some way or another. Now, I know there's some defensive issues for the Buffalo Bills, players not playing, which could be good for Miami. Now, looking at Miami, whose record is 0-2, Buffalo is 2-0. Miami, right now, Mike McDaniel is still looking to tie Tony Sparano for 29 wins. Mike McDaniel has 28 wins. He's 5th all-time in coaching victories for the Miami Dolphins. Tony Sparano is 4th with 29. So Mike McDaniel is trying to tie him for 4th. He's been trying since the beginning of the season. Probably unlikely he gets it tonight, but we'll see. Don Shula is the all-time leading coach in wins with 257. I don't see Mike McDaniel. I'm not even sure if he doesn't start showing some wins here that he makes it to the end of the season, but that's another story. Now, looking at some of the players here, right now you have, as far as receiving goes, Tyreek Hill is 9th all-time. His next up for him is Devontae Parker, who's 8th. Parker played from 2015 to 2023. He had 338 receptions. Tyreek Hill currently has 329. So he does have to have a good game, 9 receptions to tie 10 to pass Devontae Parker for 8th all-time. And then Jalen Waddle is 11th. He only needs 3 receptions to tie Devon Bess and 4 to pass him to move into 10th all-time. So you've got right now the number 9 and number 11 wide receivers for Miami playing in this game, and it's very likely that Jalen Waddle should get three receptions and probably at least 4. He's been a little banged up, but I think he'll play. He's always banged up, so that's kind of his status a lot of times. Mark Clayton leads this Miami Dolphins with 550 receptions, which, if Tyreek Hill probably won't get that far, he could get to 400 this year, but he'd have to play a couple more years for Miami, and I don't know if he does that, if he hasn't wore out his welcome there. We'll see. Now, Jalen Waddle is somebody that maybe could get there at some point. Now, looking at yards, receiving yards, this is the Marks brothers. Mark Clayton led in receptions, but Mark Duper led in receiving yards. They both played basically the same time period. For Mark Clayton was 1983 to 92, and for Mark Duper it was 1982 to 1992. So they played together for 10 years. Pretty good duo. Now, Mark Duper leads Miami all-time in receiving yards with 8,869. Currently, Tyreek Hill is 8th all-time. He needs 110 yards to pass Devontae Parker again as far as receiving yards go. He did have 106 or 109 last week, so it's very possible that he could catch him. But we'll see. Now, again, Jalen Waddle is 10th all-time here. Ryan Hartline is 9th with 4,243 yards. All Jalen Waddle needs is 17 yards in this game to move into 9th by himself. So then again, you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both in the top 10 in yards. So we'll watch that. I for sure think Waddle's going to move up in both categories. And Tyreek, if he doesn't do it this week, should do it next week when he passes Devontae Parker in those two categories. Those are all the records we're looking at. Key injuries, Waddle has a little shoulder injury, but according to what we know right now, he's optimistic to play. I do think Buffalo will win this game, though maybe not as by 11.5. And I say that if you watched Miami play last week, obviously Buffalo dominated the Jets, but Miami, they should have won that game, or they had a good chance. Let me put it that way. They had a good chance to win that game. They early on opted out to field goals too often. And then almost at the very end of the game, A-Chain caught a little screen pass, ran it in for a touchdown. But this was like with a minute to go in the game. But then on review, he just barely stepped out by, a couple inches, stepped out of bounds. And, that the touchdown was taken off the board. But that touchdown would have put Miami ahead against New England Patriots. So it was a very close game. Not to say that they would have ended up winning, but they definitely had a shot. So they played pretty well on offense. Their offense looked good. Finally got some passes down the field to Hill and Waddle. And A-Chain looks really good catching the ball out of the backfield. So they may put up a better fight than it may look on paper when you look at an 0-2 team. All right. What I'm going to do is, last week I did fantasy for each game at that game, but I think I'm going to save the fantasy outlook for the end after I just go through each of these games and then wrap it up that way instead of by game. I'm going to try it a little different this time. Game number 2 is Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. The Indianapolis Colts lead this series 39-22. The Colts are favored by 4.5. All these games will be 1:00 games. Now, looking at Tennessee Titans, they don't have anybody that's looking at any kind of records at the moment. It's going to take some time, but they will sooner or later here come up. They have no injuries really to mention. As far as the Indianapolis Colts go, the only stat we're looking at for them is, again, Kwity Paye, as far as tackles for loss, is tied for 10th all time with 32 tackles for loss. He needs one to tie Eric Walden to move into 9th all-time, and 2 to pass him to have 9th all to himself. That's really the only record we're looking at. They don't have any injuries either. In this game, I do expect the Indianapolis Colts to win this game. They're 2-0, and they've looked really good so far. So I'm expecting them to actually cover this game. Tennessee just needs a little more work, a little more time to get their game together, and I don't think they're ready for Indianapolis Colts at this time. Between Daniel Jones looking so good and then Taylor coming out of the backfield, they just have, with those two, Daniel Jones has looked good. And watching that game, he kept hitting the wide receivers all over, even under pressure. He looked good even under pressure, which was impressive. And he's been running the ball a little bit. And now with their tight end craft, they've got some good players on offense. Their defense looks really good as well. So I think it's going to be a tough game for Tennessee. Tennessee this is really the third game in a row. Cam Ward's just playing against pretty good defenses each week to start off his career, making it very difficult for him. It's like just putting him right out there under fire immediately. And I don't see him having too good of a game again this week. All right, next game. We have the Cincinnati Bengals at the Minnesota Vikings. 2-0 Cincinnati, Minnesota 1-1. The Cincinnati Bengals lead this series 8-7. The Vikings are favored by 3.5. Now, this is an interesting game because of the quarterback situation for the Bengals and the Vikings. Neither starter is playing, obviously, and we'll talk about that in a second, but it's rough for the Bengals, especially. Now, for Minnesota, right now they have Justin Jefferson, who's 4th all-time for the team in receiving yards. Anthony Carter is 3rd. Anthony Carter played in the late 80s, early 90s. He had 7,636 yards receiving. Justin Jefferson needs, 79 yards, 80 yards, and he'll move into the number 3 all-time by himself. 80 yards in this game, and I think he'll get it, actually. Chris Carter leads the team all-time with 12,383. But Justin Jefferson in his career has really been moving up the all-time list at a rapid pace. And now he's almost up to number 3 all-time for the Vikings. That's the only stat we have to look at, top 10 stat. Now, looking at injuries, key injuries, well, McCarthy, the quarterback, is out for at least 2 to 4 weeks, which is I don't know if that really is a negative. You would think it would be, but he hasn't played well at all. So we'll see what the backup quarterback is going to be able to do. Now, Aaron Jones is also out, the running back. So he went on injured reserve, and he'll be out 4 weeks at least, which really makes this promising for Mason coming in to be the main running back. Now, how this is going to affect the team altogether, we don't know. Well, it'll be something to watch. As far as the Cincinnati Bengals go, Jake Browning, who will be the quarterback, played 2.5 quarters last week after Burrow went out, has been on this team for long enough to actually be in the position to throw 1 touchdown, and he'll move into a tie for 10th in passing TDs all time, and that's only would put him at 15. He's got 14. There's a couple players with 15. He'd move into the top 10 all time with 15 touchdown passes if he gets 1 in this game, and I think it's pretty likely he will do that. Also, Jamar Chase continues to move up just like Justin Jefferson. Jamar Chase he's 8th all-time with 411 receptions right now. Chris Collinsworth, a lot of people may know as the announcer who played in the 80s, has 417 receptions. Isaac Curtis, who played in the 70s and early 80s, had 416 receptions. So Jamar Chase needs 5 to tie Curtis, 6 to tie Collinsworth, and 7 receptions to move into 6th all-time by himself. So it's very possible, after this game, he will be 6th all time. Now, looking at touchdowns, right now, Chad Johnson's the all-time leader with 66 receiving touchdowns for Cincinnati. T. Higgins is 10th. He needs 1 touchdown reception to move into a tie for 8th with Chris Collinsworth and Darnay Scott. So 2 touchdowns would put him into a tie for 7th with T.J. Houshmandzadeh, who played in the early 2000s. So he's got a chance to move all the way up to 7th position. He's 10th now. So those 2 wide receivers also, just like Hill and Waddle, are making a big impression on the numbers for all-time numbers for their respective teams. Another stat we're watching is on defense for Cincinnati is Trey Hendrickson. Right now he has 59 sacks. Ross Browner's 5th all-time, who played in the late 70s and the 80s. He had 61.5 sacks. So Trey Hendrickson needs 2.5 sacks to tie Ross Browner, 3 to move into 5th all-time. He's really pushing up toward Eddie Edwards, who played in the late 70s and 80s with 84.5 sacks. Now, whether he gets there is going to depend, obviously, on whether he can sign a long-term contract. Now, the key injuries for Cincinnati, unfortunately for them, really a bad break. He wasn't even hit hard. It's just when he was surrounded by Jaguar players as he was being sacked, his toe got, I guess, just really damaged badly. So Joe Burrow is out on injury reserve for 3 months. And they're talking about trying to get him back, Cincinnati, for the end of the season, if they can make it to the playoffs. But I think this is really something that's going to be wait and see on that. I do think who wins this game? I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to win this game. Cincinnati Bengals have not looked that great in either game. They won them both against Cleveland in a very close game and against the Jaguars in a close game. But in both games, the passing game has not looked that great. But, I mean, it was good enough to win. The running game isn't that great at the moment. Chase Brown has not stood out yet. So I don't know that they can come in with a backup Jake Browning and beat the Minnesota Vikings. But again, Minnesota's got a backup quarterback too, but it's in Minnesota, so I'm going to pick Minnesota to win this game. Next game, Pittsburgh Steelers at the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots lead this series 19 games to 16. The Steelers are favored by 1.5 points, which is interesting. It is in New England, and I guess because you just don't think of the Patriots as good enough to hold off, but 1.5 point favorite for the Steelers. Right now, the Patriots are 1-1. Looking at some of their numbers, you wouldn't have thought it after game 1, but Ramon Stevenson had a huge game last week and seems to have cemented himself as the starting running back for the New England Patriots. But right now, he's 9th all-time in rushing yards with 3,135. He only needs 46 yards to pass Corey Dillon to move into 8th all-time on the rushing list. Number 1 is Sam Cunningham with only 5,453. At the same time, Stevenson is 12th all-time. And I do the top 10, but I do it when they're close enough to make it into the top 10. But Ramon Stevenson has 21 rushing touchdowns, needs just 1 to tie for 10th place, which he needed last week as well. But he's in 10th, tied for 10th right now is Stephen Ridley and Tom Brady. Both had 22 rushing touchdowns. Stevenson needs 1 to tie them, 2 to tie Don Calhoun to move into 9th. So he has a chance to move into 9th place with a couple of touchdowns. So he's moving up this list, and I think right now he's making it difficult to get him out of the lineup. Similar thing to the Jaguars running back situation. Now, looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are also 1-1. Right now, Aaron Rodgers, this is now an NFL record, not just a team record, but NFL record-wise. Right now, Aaron Rodgers is 7th all-time in passing yards. Phillip Rivers is 6th. Aaron Rodgers has 63,399 yards. All he needs is 42 yards in this game to pass Phillip Rivers for sixth. As bad as he looked last week, he had more than 41 yards, so I expect him to move into sixth all-time in passing yards. This last game, he threw one touchdown pass and tied Brett Favre for fourth all-time in the NFL in touchdown passes with 508. So he just needs one touchdown pass, and he'll be fourth all-time by himself. He'll never catch Tom Brady, who had 649 passing TDs, to be number one, but he will move into fourth. There's a distance between for him to reach a third place, but right now he just needs to move into fourth. One more stat, as we talked about, this will be an every week number here, but tackles for loss. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, the all-time two tackle for loss leaders are Cameron Hayward, who has 134, TJ Watt has 128. Now, this last week, neither one played that well. Neither one had a tackle for loss. So they did not change their positions here as they did in week one when TJ Watt had two and Hayward had one, but nothing last week. But that's a stat we'll be watching every week to see how long it takes if TJ Watt can actually overtake Hayward or catch him. How many weeks would it take? All right. The Steelers don't have any key injuries to report, really. Who wins this game? I think, honestly, I'm picking the New England Patriots. It's in New England. They've looked fairly well. I think May continues week after week to look good. If the New England Patriots can put him in a position where he doesn't have to win the game for them necessarily, but can just keep the ball, keep making first downs. And if Stevenson can continue to play the way he did last week, I think they have a good chance. Pittsburgh Steelers, I say no key injuries for them as far as fantasy players go, but on defense, players keep dropping left and right. I think they have played horribly, right? Which you would not have expected in the first two games, just giving up a lot of points, a lot of yards. And I do think that gives New England a chance to pull this game out. So I'm going to pick New England to win this game. Now watch Aaron Rodgers prove me wrong. He looked really good the first game, or he looked decent in the first game, a lot of touchdown passes. The second game, he didn't look good at all. So we'll see what happens. All right, next game, Los Angeles Rams at the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles lead this series 25 games to 20 with one tie. The Eagles are favored by 3.5, and that's mostly, I guess, because they're at home and they are the Super Bowl champions. They did beat Kansas City. So those are all positives why they are where they are. Looking at some numbers for them, there aren't any really. The only key injury is possibly Dallas Goedert, who still has a knee issue. He's questionable for the game. So at this point, we don't know whether he'll play or not. Tight end for the Eagles. For the Rams, they're also 2-0. So this is a big game. Two 2-0 teams. Looking at some of the numbers that Matthew Stafford is looking at this week, passing touchdowns. He's 10th all-time in the NFL history with 380 touchdown passes. He needs only one to tie Matt Ryan for 9th all-time and 2 to pass him. So we're looking at Matthew Stafford already in the top 10, just needs that 1 or 2 to move into a tie or pass to move into 9th all by himself. Looking at another NFL record holder in the top 10 anyway, not holder, but in the top 10 NFL-wise, is Davante Adams. Right now, Jerry Rice is the NFL leader in receiving touchdowns with 197. Davante Adams has 104. And Mike Evans, who's still active, obviously, with Tampa Bay Buccaneers, has 105. He's in 9th all-time. So you've got two active players who are in 9th and 10th all-time in the NFL in receiving touchdowns. So we'll see if Davante Adams can catch Mike Evans as these two try to keep each other from moving ahead, like Mike Evans having Adams moving ahead of him. Obviously, Adams wants to. So that'll be a fun thing to continue to watch, to see the two of them as they try to progress up this all-time receiving touchdown list. No real big injuries for the Rams. Now, Here's another one I'm picking, the Rams to win this game. I know the Eagles have played a very different style. Hurts, his passing game is horrendous, and it's because obviously I guess they're thinking they just need to run the ball. They have a very slow pace that they play, but so far Barkley hasn't gotten off yet. Hurts looks horrible, but their defense is very good. Now Hurts could easily come out and have a big game if he has to. So far he hasn't really had to, but I guess I'm just kind of show me, prove it, and we'll see how they play. The Rams have looked really good on offense, and their defense is pretty decent as well. So I do think the Rams have a chance to win this game, and I'm going to pick them as a big upset. All right, looking at the next game, it's the New York Jets at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Jets lead this series 10-3. The Buccaneers are favored by 6.5, and I do think they get that. But we'll talk about that in a second. The Buccaneers are 2-0, another undefeated team. Right now, we're looking at Baker Mayfield, who right now is 5th all-time for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in touchdowns passed with 74. He needs 3 to catch Vinny Testaverde, who's in 4th with 77. So we'll see if he can get 3 touchdown passes in this game. It's possible he could. He needs 4, which would be a lot to ask to put him into 4th all-time by himself. Jameis Winston is number 1 all-time for the Buccaneers with 121. Looking at the running game, believe it or not, despite not being the starter, Rachaad White is 11th all-time, but he only needs 11 yards, actually 12 yards, to move into 10th all-time in rushing yards for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has 2,163. He just needs 12 to pass Ronald Jones for 10th place. James Wilder is the leader with only 5,957 rushing yards. He played in the 80s. On defense, they have one of the all-time greats right now in Levante David, who's has 170 tackles for loss. He needs just 1 to move into a tie for 6th all-time in tackles for loss list, 2 to move into 6th all by himself. So we'll be watching him. One more, and that's Chase McLaughlin. Their kicker is he needs 5 points to tie James Wilder, the running back from the 80s, for 9th all-time in scoring for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Chase McLaughlin has 271 points. Wilder has 276. So he needs 6. Couple field goals would put him in 9th all by himself. Mike Evans continues to lead in this category with 644 points. Like I said, I've mentioned this, probably will mention it more than once, but Mike Evans is one of the few, if not the only one, I have to check Jerry Rice, but who is a non-kicker who's the number 1 leading scorer for their team. No major injuries for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now for the New York Jets, they're 0-2. No wins so far. Looked horrible last week. Buffalo can do that to you, Buffalo Bills. One player we're looking at again, tackles for loss category, is Quinnen Williams. Right now, he's in a tie for 5th with 55 tackles for loss. He just needs 1 to move into 5th all by himself. So we'll see if he can do it. Now for them, Fields had a concussion. He is out for week 3. There was a lot of situations we saw in this last week between players, how they played in week 1 and how they played in week 2. And he was one of them. Looked horrible last week. So him being out may not be a bad thing. Taylor will take over for him. And we'll see how he does. But I'm going to pick Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win this game, and I think they should win it fairly easily. They have a pretty good team. They just seem to know how to win, which when you have a couple, not that the Jets are evenly matched with them at all, but when you have a quarterback that just knows how to win a game, it's such a comfort for your team, and they expect to win. So I do pick the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win this game. Next game, Las Vegas Raiders at the Washington Commanders. Right now, the Raiders lead this series 8-7. The Washington Commanders are favored by 3 points in this game over the Raiders. The Commanders are 1-1 right now. Looking at some of the stats, Terry McLaurin, who's 6th all-time in receiving yards, he's got 6,454. He only needs 39 to move into 5th all-time by himself. So hopefully, and obviously, I think for the Commanders to win, he needs to have that many yards easily. He should tack 100 onto that. He really needs to have a big game, I think. But we're going to see how that works out for them. Now, looking at another couple of players, you've got Von Miller. Well, first of all, we'll go on the team level. Darren Payne has 59 tackles for loss. He just needs one to tie Jonathan Allen with 60, who had 60, who played for the team last year, to move into a tie for second all-time on the team in tackles for loss with 60. So Darren Payne needs one to tie, two to move into second all by himself. Still quite a ways from Ryan Kerrigan, who played from 2011 to 2020 with 119 tackles for loss. Big gap between first and second for this team. Now, on an NFL level, Von Miller is 6th all-time, tied for 6th all-time with 171 tackles for loss. Now, he needs 4. I don't see him getting 4 tackles for loss. But if he got 4, he'd tie Julius Peppers for 5th all-time. So those are a couple players. Now for the Commanders, key injuries, Daniels, I'm not sure he's going to play. Quote unquote, they said he's preparing mentally to play this game, whatever that means. But unfortunately, which makes you think that he won't play, is that Mariota's been taking all the reps in this game in practice. So it'd probably be a game time decision on whether Daniels can overcome his knee injury. So you'll have to watch that as far as fantasy goes, whether he's going to be in there. And I do think it makes a huge difference if he's playing and not Mariota. Unfortunately for the Commanders, also Eckler's out for the season. Rough injury for him, and he's on IR. He'll be out for this entire season, if not, sadly, for his career. All right, looking at the Raiders, they're 1-1. And the only numbers we're looking here are sacks. Max Crosby right now is in 5th all-time for the Raiders in sacks with 60.5. Ike Lassiter's 4th with 61.5. So he just needs 1 sack to move into a tie for 4th. 2 sacks. He only needs 1.5 sacks, actually, to tie Ben Davidson for 3rd. And 2 sacks would put him in 3rd all-time by himself in sacks. So he's sitting here ready to pass 2 players to move into 3rd place. Greg Townsend leads the Raiders with 107.5 sacks. So give him a few more years. He has a chance to get that number. He's already their tackle for loss leader. Now, they don't have any key injuries. In this game, especially if Daniels is out, I'm picking the Raiders to win this game. I think that last week the Raiders did just about everything they could figure out to lose a game. Geno Smith looked horrible. Gente made some big mistakes. Rookie. Hopefully they're just rookie things that he needs to have corrected, and he'll get them corrected and play better. And I'm looking out for a breakout game from him, and I'm looking for a better game from Geno Smith, a recovery game, a game to show that the way he played or wants to play is how he played in week 1, not week 2. So if they do all that, and if Daniels does not play, I think the Raiders have a chance to win this game, despite the fact that it's in Washington. So I'm picking the Raiders in this game. All right, last game, Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. The Atlanta Falcons lead this series 37-23. The Falcons are favored by 5.5 in this game. Looking at the Carolina Panthers, they're 0-2. Not looking that great right now, though they do have some good players. It's just a couple of good players, I should say. Dave Canales has been looking to tie Steve Wilkes for 6th in coach wins. They only have 10 coaches in their history, and Canales just needs 1 win. He'll have 6 wins at that point and be tied for 6th all time in coaching wins, but he hasn't been able to get there yet. Now, looking at Chuba Hubbard in rushing yards, he's 6th all time on the team with 3,270 yards. Deshaun Foster is 5th. Chuba Hubbard only needs 67 yards to move into 5th all by himself. I think he'll get that this week and be in 5th, passing Deshaun Foster in that category. Those are really the only things for Carolina. They have no key injuries. So looking at the Atlanta Falcons, they're 1-1 right now. Looking at some of those, and it's Bijan Robinson, who's having a really good year this year, and it's just pushing him up the charts for the Atlanta Falcons. But right now he's 10th all time in rushing yards behind Haskell Standback, who played in the 70s. Bijan Robinson has 2,599 yards. He only needs 64 yards to move into 9th all by himself. I think he'll get it this week. He's been having some good games, especially actually in the receiving department. Those are some numbers we'll be looking at hopefully in the future. Now, as far as touchdowns go, Bijan Robinson just needs 1 touchdown to move into a tie for 10th with 19 rushing touchdowns. So he's looking at 2 categories here that he can move into the top 10 for the Atlanta Falcons. They don't have any key injuries either. I do expect Atlanta Falcons to win this game. They have looked very good offensively and defensively. I think they realize this running game they have can be dominating. When you have Robinson and Algiers, it's somewhat like Gibbs and Montgomery for Detroit. They can just pound this ball, and it's very difficult to stop them. And then you do have Penix, who didn't look that great, didn't pass for that many yards last week, but the week before he did. So it kind of is telling you that depending on the team they're playing, they can run the ball down your throat, or if they need to, they can throw it. So either way, they have a good offense, and their defenses look better than a lot of people expected. So that's a look at the 8 games. So I do, like I said, expect Atlanta to win this game easily and cover that spread. That's a look at all the games. Now, looking at some of the fantasy numbers, who are players you might want to start? Obviously, you're going to start all the regulars. But if you look at these so-called experts, for example, one list here has Jalen Hurts as the number 3 quarterback this week. And I guess it could be true. I'm going to wait and see on that. I just find that amazing that that's the case. But we'll see. Some of the ones you might want to take a peek at, for example, are Justin Herbert. He's really showing he's been playing well. He is playing against Denver, who didn't look that great as their offense usually looks. I mean, their defense backfield looks normally. But he could put up a good number on the Broncos. Some of those other ones we might look at. If you're struggling at quarterback, or you have to pick up and you don't have one of the top quarterbacks, honestly, Aaron Rodgers is a possible play here. He looked bad last week, but he does throw a lot of touchdown passes, and he's playing against the New England Patriots, who have the worst passing defense in the NFL. So it's very possible Rodgers puts up a big number on the New England Patriots in this game. The same goes for Dak Prescott. He had a big game last week, and he had to keep them in the game. That was a huge game with the Giants. But Prescott last week threw for 361 yards. This week, they're playing against the Bears defense, which is 30th in fantasy against quarterbacks. So he's looking to put up a big number as well. Now, somebody like Josh Allen is somebody I don't know that I want to play them. The only way Josh Allen scores well, it seems, is if he needs to. But last week, he was one of the worst quarterbacks as far as fantasy goes. Lamar Jackson, you're going to play all the time. Patrick Mahomes, I think I'd bench him. They do get Worthy back. That should help. But and the Giants defense obviously gave up a ton of points to Prescott for Dallas last week, and the Chiefs are playing the Giants, but I don't see it. Patrick Mahomes, has had to run. All the points he's getting as far as fantasy go are by rushing, not by passing. He's not looked that great. Can't get the ball downfield very successfully, so I would not start him. I would start Drake May. I do feel that the Steelers' defense has been struggling so far, giving up a lot of passing yards, giving up over 27 points to quarterbacks fantasy-wise. So Drake May would be a good one to start. I don't know that I'd start Jaden Daniels. I'd be worried about the knee because of the fact, even if he plays, I'd be ready to. You hate to bench Jaden Daniels. If you don't have anything better, you'd start him. But if you do, you might think about benching him. Now, one more, if you're really looking for some quarterbacks, a couple more, but Mac Jones for the 49ers. Brock Purdy is out. Jones will be in. And he had a good game against the Saints, threw for 279 yards, 3 touchdowns. So they're playing the Arizona Cardinals, who have a decent defense, but nothing spectacular. So Mac Jones could be a surprise play for you. All right, those are some of the quarterbacks you might take. Sam Darnold would be one more who could maybe have a good game for you for Seattle against the Saints. Saints have given up the 8th most fantasy points again for quarterbacks. So somebody that you might want to put in there. Who you can get Sam Darnold and Mac Jones almost right off your waiver wire in most leagues, I would expect. Even Aaron Rodgers, who would be my number one pick if you have to pick up a quarterback. Now, looking at wide receivers that you definitely want to start, obviously you're going to start Malik Neighbors. I don't care who they're playing against or whatever situation is. And right now, Kansas City's secondary doesn't look that great. So I see Neighbors having another big game. George Pickens has played well. And they're again playing against the Chicago Bears, whose defense is one of the worst in the NFL. In fact, last against wide receivers. So I would start both Pickens and Lamb in easily. Despite that, I haven't really mentioned it much, but Rome Odunze is definitely now the guy for Chicago as far as wide receivers go. I think he's now their number one receiver for sure. So you want to start him, and especially against Dallas. Obviously, Dallas last week, their defense gave up, I believe, 450 yards passing to Russell Wilson. So I think Caleb Williams can do something similar. Plus, Caleb Williams can run as well. DK Metcalf, who hasn't had big games, but he does get the touchdowns to saves his fantasy numbers. I think he has a big game because I do think that Aaron Rodgers does. So you can put Metcalf and Rodgers together, and it's possible you have a very good matchup there because New England's defense is one of the worst, in fact, 31st worst against wide receivers, and 30th and the worst against quarterbacks. So big game there, possibly. Those are all people you're obviously going to have a little harder time finding. You're not going to find them on the waiver wire, but if you have options and you've been benching Metcalf, maybe I would start him. One player you can get off the bench that you might want to start is Olamide Zacchaeus for Chicago, the wide receiver. He's been catching plenty of passes. So, like I said, the Cowboys allowed 450 yards passing, so he's somebody that you can pick up off the bench without a problem. All right, those are some of the big ones. One more, Travis Hunter. 2 more, actually. But you won't probably find Wan'Dale Robinson. Let me talk about Travis Hunter. This one is based not so much on what he's done so far. He's targeted 14 times in 2 games right now, but only has 55 yards. And the reason it's a possibility, and we'll watch, and this would be an iffy one for sure, but right now, Brian Thomas has looked horrible. He's caught 5 catches on 19 targets in 2 games. They threw out the fact that he had an injury to explain a wrist injury to explain last week's game. That if that's the case, it was never mentioned any time prior to the game, and he was never on the injury report for it. And watching the game, him not catching balls had nothing to do with his wrist. It had more to do that he was about to get hit, and he decided he didn't want to. His level of enthusiasm to play was not there. He dropped that key pass that was right in his stomach. It had nothing, again, to do with the wrist. He just turned his head and dropped the ball. Big fourth down play. They needed that. The Jaguars did at the time. So if he comes out and looks that bad right off the bat, I think that pushes Travis Hunter up into an opportunity to be the number one wide receiver, and he could have a better game than you would expect. And then the last one, and this is not a secret anymore on the waiver wires, but Wan'Dale Robinson for the Giants has put up a career number last week. Now, I'm always leery on that when somebody puts up a huge number and then you say, okay, well, now that's how he plays. So we'll see. But I do think that it's a possibility that the Giants do have to play from behind, or at least have to pass it enough to keep up with Kansas City, whose offense isn't that good, though. But they could have to have him play enough that he gets up some good numbers. And I'll throw one more in there, even though you probably can't find him, is Deebo Samuels. If Daniels plays, Daniels has been looking for him as a safety valve, and he could be a good safety valve if Mariota plays as the quarterback as well. So that's some of the wide receivers. Now, looking at running backs, obviously you're going to start all the number one guys. Isaiah Pacheco is somebody you might want to throw in there. He hasn't looked good yet, but they need Kansas City needs one of their running backs to step up here. And the Giants' run defense has not been that great. So it's a possibility that Pacheco can have a bigger game. Looking at one more here. Mostly you're starting all the number one guys. Some of these ones that you don't want to start, I think, Trevion Henderson. He actually was third running back for the New England, and he had 3 terrible penalties that were called on him, holding penalties. He's having a rough time, at least right now, and Stevenson's looking so good that I don't expect him to play enough, have enough carries to be significant. Now, he could end up busting one open, which is a possibility, but I would not start him. As much as I, like a lot of people, had high hopes that he would overtake Stevenson. But if you watch that game, Stevenson looked good, running through people, around people, looked quick, caught a pass. So he looked really good. Now, one big player that you may be able to pick up still is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt for the Washington Commanders. Now that Eckler's out for the year with his Achilles, he should even get more carries, and it's a possibility. He hasn't been much for the passing game, but maybe they give him the opportunity to catch a few passes as well, since Eckler's not there. So he's somebody I would want to start if you are looking for a running back. All right, those are the running backs. Now, one more category, looking at the tight ends. This has been amazing, but Kyle Pitts, some of the tight ends, you're not seeing the guys you expect to see up here, but Kyle Pitts is somebody you may want to play for Atlanta against the Carolina Panthers. He's already had 13 targets thrown his way, which is quite a bit for him. And Carolina defense isn't looking good again. They're the worst defense against tight ends. And Penix has no hesitation to throw it to Pitts. So that's somebody you might want to start in this game. Obviously, Juwan Johnson, you could have picked up off the waiver wire at the beginning of the season before week 1. But he's just definitely pushed himself up there as the number one tight end at the moment for New Orleans. He's got 13 catches on 22 targets. So he's really played well. He had a drop, but then he had a huge, impressive touchdown that he made. It's interesting how he can drop a pass that he should have caught and then makes a spectacular catch on another pass. But right now, he's a good guy to have if you even have a chance to get him. He won't sit in the waiver wire much longer, and it's probably too late by now. But right now he's playing against the Seahawks, who defense against tight ends is the 4th worst. So he has the opportunity to be big in this game as well. Now, one more is Dalton Schultz for Houston. I say one more, but there may be more. But Dalton Schultz, he's only had 6 catches, but the Jaguars have a tendency to give up some passes to tight ends, so there's a possibility that he has a good game. Other than that, I'm looking here. If you have Njoku because you expected him to be the guy for Cleveland, it's rough. He has not been. It's been Harold Fannin, the rookie, who's had more targets thrown his way. So I don't like it either way. I don't know that I'd want to start either one at this point in time till one of them dominates, and I don't know that that's going to be the case. One more you might like to pick up is Zach Ertz, who's really come on strong, had some good touchdowns, and he's much better than anybody would have thought. He's been somebody you could have picked up off the bench as well for Washington. So it's a good chance that he has another good game in this, even if it's Mariota as the quarterback. All right, that's a look at some of your fantasy players that you might want to start. Appreciate you listening. And tomorrow I'll do the matchups and look at the games, the rest of the games, the rest of the 1 o'clock games. There's so many 1 o'clock games again, and very few games at 4 o'clock. Why there's so many at 1, I don't know. But we'll look at the rest of the games, and we'll look at the Thursday night game and see how that game turned out. Appreciate you listening. Until next time, appreciate if you like and subscribe at YouTube, at Just the Stats NFL. Everywhere, that's where you find me. Just the Stats NFL, Facebook, X, Instagram. At Gmail, you can find me at justthestatsnfl@gmail.com. Appreciate you listening. And that is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL.